Good evening. I'm Ann Nyberg, and thank you for joining us for this News 8 special celebrating women. This has been an historic year for women in the United States, and women's voices are being heard like never before. A record 117 women were elected last November. Among them, Johanna Hayes, the first African-American woman to represent Connecticut in Congress. News 8's Laura Hutchinson spoke with her about what it means to be a part of history.
From the cover of Rolling Stone to women in white at the State of the Union address, there's a movement happening to get more female representation on Capitol Hill. And freshman Congresswoman Johanna Hayes, who's also the first African-American Congresswoman to be elected in Connecticut, is not only a part of that movement, she's at the center of it.
My race surprisingly gained national attention. There was this momentum, this surge.
Women make up 50% of the population nationwide, and while they're still not fully represented as such in the nation's capital, there's an obvious shift in that direction. The female representatives donned white at the State of the Union address to draw attention to the record number of women in office now. Some of them were featured on the cover of the News and Entertainment magazine Rolling Stone.
The best part about that was I saw on social media one of my students put my 10th grade teachers on the cover of Rolling Stone, and then the chain started.
Thank you so much. Connecticut's longest serving Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, who's been in office nearly 30 years, says joining Congress today as a woman is very different from when she started in 1991.
When I was elected to the Congress, there were 14 women. Now we're looking at 131 women. What is really exhilarating is to see women on the floor of the House, and even some of the more senior women with young children. You know, they're there.
Change is already happening to accommodate the growing number of moms moving into office space on Capitol Hill.
One of the immediate changes was with the calendar. When it was released, it was changed to reflect school opening, school closing, so we'll be on break during those weeks.
Policy change geared toward women is on the agenda. Equal pay for equal work, paid family leave, paid sick days.
Many years ago, I was regarded as the crazy aunt in the attic by sponsoring all of these pieces of legislation and authoring them. Now they are all the center. There's a new perspective.
In my committee, we just passed pay equity, gender pay equity out, Title IX, sexual assault on college campuses. We hear a lot about that.
The new Congress may still be taking shape, but it's clear times are evolving, and women not only have a voice in today's society, they have a seat at the negotiating table.
I have so many young people, parents, students, grandparents reach out that just say what this does for them. You know, people who have been at this their whole life, to kind of see it happen. I don't think I ever fully appreciated that until now.
And we talked to Hayes, who's also a former school teacher, the day right after she introduced her first piece of legislation. It would prohibit the use of federal funds for the purpose of arming teachers. For News 8, I'm Laura Hutchinson.
Women are strengthening the economy. Over the last 2 decades, Connecticut's women-owned businesses have grown by 56%. Cindy Bigelow has headed up Fairfield-based Bigelow Tea as its CEO since 2005. Cindy's grandmother, Ruth, started the company in 1945 in her kitchen. The blend of tea she created, called Constant Comment, is still sold today. Cindy started out working for Seagram's in a division made up of 100 men and just 6 women. As a teenager, she sold Bigelow displays to stores owned by men. She shares her advice on breaking through in a man's world.
You gotta learn how to get around it. I think women have a wonderful skill set of being able to understand the environment, understand the body language, and your job is to get around it. Yes, you can be upset, yes, you can complain, but that's not gonna get you ahead.
Cindy started the Bigelow Tea Community Challenge, which has given $1.6 million back into the community. Coming up, the women of Connecticut who made history in the skies.
Where's the pilot? I'm like, well, you're looking at her. I am the pilot.
You will learn how they're helping women of all ages reach new heights. At a UConn basketball legend's personal struggle is a secret no more. How Breanna Stewart's heart-wrenching Me Too message is making a big impact off the court.
It's time for us to take on the mantle of leadership, and until we are represented in the numbers that we make up in our state and in our cities, then we really won't have full representation. A lot of decisions are made for us. Decisions ought to be made with us.
I spent the past 23 years in a male-dominated field, and it is very important for women and girls to see somebody who looks like them in a male-dominated area, in a male-dominated profession, letting them know that they can do it.
That was Trooper First Class Kelly Grant. She is making a push for more women to join the ranks of state police and help protect Connecticut. A duo of trailblazing women forging a path for Trooper Grant and the rest of the women on the force. Back in 1942, Catherine Haggerty and Evelyn Briggs became the first policewomen to be appointed to Connecticut State Police. They were not called troopers at the time. Briggs and Haggerty were sent to the New York City Police Academy for training. Briggs was described as a crack shot, winning awards as a member of the state policewomen's marksmanship team. Briggs and Haggerty were joined by dozens of other women later that year, appointed provisionally as policewomen during World War II. Another field traditionally dominated by men, aviation. Only about 6% of pilots are women today. Those that have achieved that status jumped over incredible hurdles. We talked to 3 women in different types of aviation at the New England Air Museum in Windsor Locks.
Straighten up and fly right.
This trio has earned their stripes in the world of aviation, pushing through male-dominated skies. Terry Vandendolder of Madison, an American Airlines pilot, also served the country for nearly 30 years in the United States Air Force and Reserves, becoming a decorated lieutenant colonel. Kathy Wadsworth of Farmington is an aeronaut who flew balloons over remote areas of the world. And Peggy Leffler of Oakville started flying as a child and became a flight instructor and examiner, producing America's newest pilots.
When I went into pilot training in the Air Force in 1982, combat exclusion laws were in place. Women were not allowed to fly fighters.
When I started in the 70s, I don't know, there might have been 3,000 balloon pilots in the world.
How many women?
Maybe 20.
I never saw women in the cockpit of a commercial plane because they were not allowed to fly.
Can you imagine flying this thing?
Terry Vandendolder decided to take to the air while a student at UConn. She went on to become a top-notch pilot, finding herself flying missions, some solemn during Operation Desert Storm.
We were carrying a full airplane from top to bottom, front to back, with empty metal caskets, just in case they were needed later on. And unfortunately, after the barracks at Dahran were hit by a Scud missile, I was actually on the flight that returned 12 of those back to the U.S. From Dahran with KIAs, or our soldiers, men and women, that were killed in action.
Another dangerous mission.
Landing a C-141 on an ice runway at McMurdo Station in Antarctica in 1986. There's no earth below your runway. And just the sensation of landing on ice, and also the view of all that white. The touchdown was so smooth, and so you could feel the ice just gently giving way.
In the 1970s, Kathy Wadsworth and a male counterpart flew hot air balloons all over the world, including Venezuela, achieving altitude, distance, and duration records.
It was challenging. I mean, these areas that we were flying in were remote. One was Angel Falls, which is the tallest waterfall in the world. One was an archipelago of, like, I don't know, 113 little islands off the coast of Venezuela in the Caribbean. I'm feeling the air, whether it's cold or warm, or, you know, I'm seeing the landscape. It's really intimate.
Leffler, a chief flight instructor at Berkshire Aviation in Massachusetts, is bringing women of note in flight together in a future permanent exhibit at the New England Air Museum.
I find great pleasure in sharing my passion for being in the sky with someone who's brand new to flying.
Don't deny yourself. You know, go for it. We all did.
Straighten up and fly right.
And we have more information on the New England Air Museum and how to support the proposed Women in Flight exhibit posted on our website, WTNH.com, in the Celebrating Women's section. Still to come, a trailblazer from Connecticut's past whose legacy lives on today. We'll tell you how the daughter of a slave went on to become the state's first female pharmacist. And a stunning admission from one of UConn basketball's biggest names.
I couldn't sleep. I was always up. Just because that would be the time that things would happen.
More than 1 year after she said "Me Too," how Breanna Stewart is impacting the lives of young girls and women. The daughter of a slave went on to become the first female pharmacist in Connecticut. News 8's Keith Kuntz shows us how the legacy of Anna Louise James continues in Old Saybrook.
A true trailblazer, she was known to generations of people in Old Saybrook simply as Ms. James.
She was just all things to all people.
The life of Anna Louise James truly one to celebrate. Born in 1886, she graduated from the Brooklyn College School of Pharmacy, later becoming the first female pharmacist in Connecticut. James took over this pharmacy on Main Street in 1917, when its previous owner, her brother-in-law Peter Lane, went off to fight in World War I. She would later rename it James Pharmacy. At the time, James was one of just a handful of African Americans in town, but she would quickly become part of the fabric of the community.
What was it about her personality that was so special?
She always had a smile. She always gave you the feeling of, don't worry about it, honey, I can take care of it for you. She was kind of like a member of everybody's family.
Today, the place where Ms. James worked and lived for decades remains one of the town's most famous structures. When you come in this building, you can almost feel the presence of Miss James behind the pharmacy counter dispensing medication. She was a woman who was truly beloved in this community for many decades. Inside this original cabinet from the James Pharmacy, fountains and ice cream scoopers from the original soda fountain, and even bottles of medication used by Ms. James herself.
I know.
Now, what was snake root used for?
It could be used to cure any manner of infection, probably.
Longtime Old Saybrook resident Barbara Maynard remembers vividly coming here as a child in times of need.
If you had a cut from a clamshell, if you were bitten by a crab, if you had poison ivy, you went to Miss James.
A gathering spot for regular folk and the famous, like Fenwick resident and legendary film star Katharine Hepburn, who was known to stop by with her Hollywood friends.
She would come in and everybody would know her, of course, and she was very friendly, and she would get her ice cream and she'd get her papers, and she came with Spencer Tracy. I remember that.
What was the pharmacy then is now a bed and breakfast run by Eileen Satile and her husband Paul.
We'd like for people to enjoy James Pharmacy 300 years from now and see the quality and how special this place is and what a difference Miss James made. As long as the James Pharmacy is open, people will continue to tell their story.
In Old Saybrook, Keith Kuntz, News 8.
Anna Louise James passed away in 1977. Her pharmacy is on the National Register of Historic Places. Next, one of the greatest to ever play the game of basketball opens up about her painful past.
Saying that my article helped save their life or that type of thing. You know, those are powerful statements.
UConn legend Breanna Stewart shares her life after saying "Me Too," and changing millions of lives with the stroke of a pen. How a Connecticut woman helped put an end to slavery in America.
There are a lot of women that I admire. We're very lucky we have a lot of great women, but I always think of Governor Ella Grasso. I think she was an inspiration. I remember I was much younger then and looking at what she had to do, and then not only that, but then when her health and she had issues and she did everything still with dignity and did everything that she was supposed to be. I think that she was a great example.
national championship goes to Connecticut for the 4th year in a row.
Securing their dynasty in 2016, the UConn women made history. They became the first women's college basketball team to win 4 national championships in a row. The key to the Huskies' success in that era? Breanna Stewart, who made history herself over and over again. 4 NCAA titles, 4 Final Four tournament MVPs, picked #1 overall in the 2016 WNBA draft, and the youngest member of the U.S. Olympic team, winning gold in Rio. Stewart is truly one of the greatest to ever play the game of basketball, only 24 years old. Farah Jadran shows us how she's racking up assists off the court as well.
Ordering up drills for youngsters dribbling on the same hardwood she once played on. Seattle Storm star forward Breanna Stewart bringing her first basketball camp home to North Syracuse last December. Once lighting up high school hoops for the Cicero North Syracuse North Stars, Stewie went on to win 4 straight NCAA titles with UConn.
When I dreamed about things, it was kind of like when I was in high school, I dreamed about, college. And then when I was in college, I'm like, oh, I can go play in the WNBA.
The Seattle Storm select Breanna Stewart.
The #1 draft pick in 2016, Stewie would scoop up several awards that same year, including a pair of ESPYs and a gold medal in Rio.
Now I know that anything is possible, really.
Stewie has proved she can conquer the court. And since she started, she's been aiming from well beyond the arc to make an even bigger mark on the world. Last year, Stewie stood up and shared her truth with the world in the Players' Tribune, echoing "Me Too" with countless other survivors of sexual abuse.
Saying that my article helped save their life or that type of thing, those are powerful statements.
Saying "Me Too" on the world stage is just part of Stewie's mission that goes beyond breaking records and winning awards.
If it's something that I believe in, I'm going to share my opinion.
Stewie's long list of awards and fame put her in a league of her own, but her beginning tethers her to what many can connect to. Reporting in North Syracuse, New York, I'm Farah Jadran.
Still ahead on Celebrating Women, one of the most influential authors in history lived in Connecticut. Harriet Beecher Stowe's own personal tragedy inspired the book that helped bring an end to slavery. One of the most influential women in U.S. history lived in Connecticut. Harriet Beecher Stowe wrote the book that helped persuade many others to end slavery. News 8's Kent Pierce looks back on her legacy, which lives on at the Harriet Beecher Stowe Center in Hartford.
And she does a lot of writing up here. She likes the afternoon sun. And
this Hartford house is where Harriet Beecher Stowe lived the last 24 years of her life. You probably know Stowe's book, Uncle Tom's Cabin. But did you know it was by far the best-selling novel of the entire 19th century?
And not just the best-selling woman author of the 19th century, but the best-selling
novel, of the 19th century.
Stowe came up with the idea when she lived in Cincinnati, Ohio as a young woman. She went across the river to Kentucky, a slave state, and saw something that always stayed with her.
Mother and child being sold separately at a human auction, right, being separated from one another, which was a really common experience in the American system of slavery, but not something Stowe had really thought about much before.
Then Stowe suffered her own personal tragedy. Her son died at the age of just 18 months. Suddenly she knew what it was like to lose a child, much like that woman at the slave auction.
And she resolves that the only way she is going to feel able to process her own grief is to do something.
That something became Uncle Tom's Cabin, first published in pieces in a newspaper, then as a book.
It has this incredible impact, and the experience for a lot of folks reading it, white people reading it, is to really for the first time make an emotional connection to enslaved people, to black people in America.
A decade later, Abraham Lincoln met Stowe and famously said, "So you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great war." Stowe may have been anti-slavery, but she did not think African Americans should vote. She wasn't even sure white women should vote. She was progressive, but still a product of her time, which they acknowledge at the Stowe Center.
Not to put Stowe on a pedestal and imagine her as this person who did a great thing in the past and we should come and celebrate it, but as something that is living and something that continues.
One way they do that is to have visitors write down something they would like to change by writing their own book. In Hartford, I'm Kent Pierce, News 8.
The Harriet Beecher Stowe Center is part of the Connecticut Women's Heritage Trail. The sites include 14 museums and historic houses. We have a full list of locations on WTNH.com. Thank you for watching, and good night.